Right, let's get on with part four. And we did a piece where I said you can wait for NASA to build rockets and spacecraft to travel to the stars, or you can work on yourself and go yourself. Which is more beneficial? Now, many can't do it as a collective, as we are a bit immature and a bit lazy, minded-wise, and people waiting for things to come to them rather than going for it themselves. People often say, well, it doesn't matter, and then you learn that matter is a beam of light. Are you saying we should ignore the light? Everything matters, not just Black Lives. Because as From Russia with Love has shown, everything in their world is all interconnected and was locked tight so much that the majority of people were completely oblivious to it. And so clearly, to the dark, everything matters. And we must replicate that in a light way. Now, the key to spirituality is to go within. You don't need fake shamans, lamas, or priests to do so. They've all been taught the wrong path on a bigger scale than we have. Perhaps the word consciousness will make things clearer, like a light bulb moment. And there are lots of New Age and alt media people bandying that word around, but I suspect only a few really understand it or the concept. Consciousness first came up in 1630, which means internal knowledge. Not external, internal. From conscious plus ness, meaning state of being aware of what passes in one's own mind. From the 1670s, again, the state of being aware of anything is from 1746, while many will equate it to being aware of what, I would ask. Now, aware that politicians are corrupt and churches are fake and banks rape us, yes, are all examples of being aware or awake, as we say. But they are all external awarenesses, are they not? Consciousness is internal knowledge. Consciousness is about you. And THI is about you gaining your internal knowledge. The external knowledge is largely for your awareness of your surroundings and to protect your inner knowledge and being via consciousness. You have been on a knowledge-consuming exercise. Perhaps the term I use in the show is called sin-eating makes more sense now and also has a deeper meaning or trigger to it now than when it first came out. Knowledge or sin-eating, you have to consume it, then process it with the goal then to convert it or transmute it to gain energy, which is power, from it. Then when it's all filtered, you spit out what is not needed. So we did From Russia with Love 8, A through C, and we discussed the lamas, the Dalai Lamas and the Tibet, and some of the bad practices that they were doing, still are. And some will say it's only a few lamas or priests doing this stuff. You can't just dismiss things because of a few bad apples. But if that is your thinking, you are missing the point. It's not the individuals I'm referring to, it's the program. Who operates it becomes irrelevant. It's a bit like politicians, same as government. Parties and presidents change, but it all remains the same. Why? Because it's the same program. And yet, so many of us follow it. And there is a reason why they say following blindly because you don't see what is going on. It's a spell cast to make those with eyes to not see. But once you see, their whole illusion program falls apart. So we covered some of it and the bit about Mary, who got pregnant by the Holy Ghost, they say. So if Jesus was the Son of God, that means God is a ghost, does it not? They tell you it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. But what happened to the mother? Immaculate Conception again? Dearie me. But ghost as a word did not come into the language until the 15th century. So how can the church base this on something that was alleged to have happened 2020 years ago? Like the letter J, it never existed until the same time period as the word ghost. It makes no sense. The term ghastly derives from the word ghostly, and it's not a coincidence. But let's look into the word ghost, shall we? Given it's a relatively new term in comparison to the timeline of the Bible. Another word for ghost was ghoul, meaning an evil spirit who seizes things, who fed on the dead and the living, until they were taught how to feed on the living. Yes, you can thank our Lord for that. Also referenced as a demon, G for ghoul, and then host, J, host. The ghoul hosts. And the ghost in... everything okay? Yep. The ghost in Christian references is clearly undefined, but it has to be male if it got Mary pregnant, or maybe not, because in their world they can just make shit up as they go along, and critical thinking on the matter destroys their illusion. The information makes no sense unless you are comatose, and that's not your toes in a coma, it's your brain and thinking pattern. If sense is common, why is it rare when it comes to these programs? All of it falls back to the fake Jewish Hebrewism, ruining everything that was sacred here, backed by their Anunnaki counterparts, and yes, they are linked, and they are one and the same. They went about distorting our thoughts. Yes, that's where the term thoughts came from, thoughts. And much of life as we knew it is and was fake. The masks worked well, but not no more they don't. Thoth was another one like Solomon, supposed to be helping here, and fell for the dark seducement, another of the Pleiadian Nibiru crew that wreaked havoc here, and his group called the Avians. No, not the fake blue chicken variety, but they are one of the 5 groups of beings that made up the Anunnaki group. Now, as an added piece, we added a piece to 8A, and we discussed the missing zodiac Ophiuchus. The constellations of the zodiac are generally associated with the months of the Hebrew calendar. Not a coincidence, because it's lunar-based is why, and why the Jewish people follow Lilith, the Dark Mother, known as the Kali Ma, which means Dark Mother. Now, this is not to be taken as a denigration of Jewish people. They've been used as pawns more than we have. And they, like the rest of the world, have to see the illusion and break through it. Now, I'm pleased to see some of them are. which is good, a real good thing. But some of the more religious sectors of the alt media are crying, saying the cabal is ending the connection to God of the book. And yes, that is exactly the case. But the God of the book is not yours or my God. So they're actually doing us a favour in a roundabout way. But what they are doing is creating a new God, which is them, with the power centre in Jerusalem. As one illusion falls, they create a new one. Now, in my opinion, the word God needs to be universally replaced with source, and the people told their source, not God, is within them, not external. Now, the key to it all is people coming together. This is what they fear the most. And a reminder of their fear when the people in the past started to come together and were building a city in the Middle East and becoming a community. This biblical chapter tells you what happened next. Genesis 11-6, and the Lord said, quote, if they have begun to do this as one people speaking the same language, then nothing they devise will be beyond them. 7. Come, let us go down. Us? I thought the Lord was singular. And confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them from there over the face of all the earth, and they stopped building the city. Or try this. The Lord will bring a nation from afar, from the ends of the earth, to swoop down upon you like an eagle, a nation whose language you will not understand. Now, most will have misinterpreted that, which is understandable, but this is exactly what this is saying. They will swoop with the phoenix, which is the Bennu bird of Egypt and Ra. Not with a country, as people assume nation means. The reference to a nation being a country was not introduced until 1864. The old term, a nation, means a race, tribe or species with a different language. There is your ET disclosure right there in that sentence. A language you don't understand means it came from somewhere else, not Earth. That language was Latin. That rules law. Which religion is known as the religion of law? Judaism. Which I know is connected to the Draco and subsequently the Anunnaki. Now, what this tells you about this particular Lord that so many worship is, he was evil, demonic, and a psychotic son of a bitch. And one thing that will be overlooked in the Bible is the Lord is always spelt in capital letters, which means the Lord is dead. And yet we are told they are immortal. Funny that. Well, Anu wasn't immortal and was removed late last year. Bye. Scriptures, Bibles and fake emerald tablets done by Thoth to distort real knowledge. But hidden within the bullshittery are gems of truth. So you can't dismiss it all. But once you grasp the understanding, those books and scriptures were not about us and our story, but them and their story. It's no different to the hieroglyphs in Egypt. That's not about Egyptians. Yeah. Those books that are said to be all holy are riddled with wrath, vengeance, bloodletting, incest, sacrificing, bodily fluids and waste of all kinds for ceremonies, deception, sorcery, magic, black magic, worshipping non-humans, binding, plagues, demons, beheadings, denigrating women, dark sexual magic, and word magic, all done in a veiled, hidden cloak of deception and wrapped into programs that is said to be good for you. No. Like religion and spirituality, it is corrupted beyond repair and needs to be scrapped and a true story told. The Bible is their story, not ours. It has been a tough learning lesson that is littered with traps, spells, and misunderstandings. And the key to it is intention. Intentions that you set, not the entity set, who laid out the path of doom for you, and you have to learn to chart your own path, and that only you are responsible for doing that. Man fell, it said. No, we all fell into the pit of darkness, and only now some are seeing the shaft of light at the top of it and beginning to emerge out of it. It was an emergency, one word. It's now 3 words: emerge and see. Take note of that. The climb out is and was muddy, filthy, brutal and strenuous, but ultimately worthwhile as the animus within us takes hold and goes forward. Animus means rational soul, mind, life, mental powers, consciousness, sensibility, courage, desire. We will require all of those qualities and more going forward, as we are in the quickening period. Take note of that. They set traps everywhere. They killed us in the sea after 7 years. But we were reborn and another trap was set. As we emerge out of the sea onto the land, they put us in quicksand. Left our heads in the sand, and the key now is establishing ourselves on the land, not the quicksand or the maritime traps. Maritime is Mari, and again a reference to the Dark Mother. But Thomas, it's all a bit depressing here, and the alt media, religion and spiritual practices are corrupted, and I get that to a degree. But from my perspective, it's enlightening, because we're seeing through the illusion, through the fog, passed down to us from the mists of time. It's the truth path to real enlightenment, which comes from within. The dark have far more work to do than us on themselves, as they are way more out of balance than we are. They brought it on themselves also, via the misuse of free will. And it's all about riding the waves as you bob forward, which is progression. This is not linear time actions or linear line actions, but the vertical timeline events. On linear events, you are told to wait for things to happen. If you stand still on a linear path, you go backwards. In those terms, it can perhaps be deduced that the Wake Club was actually a spell cast. Some will say, well, does it matter or doesn't it matter? Unaware they're more spellcasts. Matter is a beam of light. And so all light matters. Some will say nothing is sacred anymore. Not on the external it isn't, but what is sacred is you. Yes, you for the hard of hearing. How are you going to help, prepare and develop you and protect that what is sacred? And that will be the key. It's an arduous process we face and faced, but we work with what we have. It's a challenge, maybe the biggest challenge you'll ever face. But with attitudes of I'm possible instead of impossible, it's not insurmountable as we have shown. Because as shown in the giant strides of progress we have made already. But it requires fluidity, which is flexibility, and the fluidity is recognized by what's inside of you. Water. We are 70 to 80% water, and we can make our own oceans inside be angry and violent, or we can calm them like the rivers. Your water is streaming again inside of you. It's starting to flow again. Those illusions you absorbed were for the purpose of creating dams inside of you. Dams restrict the flow of water. Water is the source of life, they say. And we are the only planet that has living water. Perhaps the water is the source. Subsequently, you are the living embodiment of living water and the source spark within you. The fluid movement water that is within you is a river stream of thought, love and consciousness. Love, they say, it is a river. I say let it flow. The 11/11 event, stated throughout alt media, was about the dark forces opening up portals and letting in the armies to create havoc again. It failed. And at least 2 portals were opened, in one in Russia and one in Switzerland. And this was to wreak maximum damage on this planet and turn the tide back in their favour. Like I said, it failed. But people doing mass meditations have to realise you're being duped into opening up these portals for them via certain chants and incantations within the meditation word magic ritual. Now, the situation was contained, around 150 dead and 4,000 plus were quarantined, whereby they all died and returned to source. For those who fight on that level, use a Faraday cage to contain them. No current-based energy can go in, and so they can't feed, and subsequently they die off. The head and ultimate in the dark magician world, known as the Destroyer and his legion of armies, has now been completely eliminated from all planes of existence. We were aware of it over a week ago, well, just over a week at the time of writing this. I think this was middle November. But their minions confirmed the event did take place in the now, and caused some high-profile peoples to now admit that they're not part of the Order of the Black Sun, the Rothschilds being the prime example, and actually that they were their enemies. Jackasses being duped again. You see, what these people, and in some case entities, don't get is they were all played big time. The illusion was this group and that group were enemies. It's the often repeated boogeyman and saviour program again. And one day you will all realise the dark played both and all sides. Create nasties, then create another set of nasties, call one the light and one the dark. One is the boogeyman and one is the saviour. No, you are both energy harvesting batteries. Like the mirror-created conflict called the Cold War, the US fought the SU, Soviet Union, and the SU fought the US, all of which was total bullshittery from day one. There was no separate US or SU. SU is just US in the mirror. And so it wasn't the United States fighting the Soviet Union, it was us fighting us. And the dark winds off both sides. Clowns at Langley, military. Take note of that last paragraph. Us fighting us. Forget countries. They don't apply. So now the Dark Destroyer, who I believe goes by the name Kal Karinjan, whose female counterpart was the Kali Ma, and subsequently Lilith, who all tribal people have been taught to worship of and subsequently sacrifice to her. The same entities who all the Hebrew, Buddhist, Hinduist people are worshipping, the witchcraft people and their goddesses, were all worshipping the Kali Ma and the Dark Mother Moon ritual-based entity, siphoning vast quantities of life force energy off the people participating in it, but also those who came in to contact with them. A self-perpetuating virus. With the Destroyer out the way, this will now allow things to move on to the next stage, and the key battles are being won and won heavily, and the end game moves closer again now. Universe that was once 87% dark is now heading close to the balance of 45-55. Then we put out this piece. Some may be noticing, and some have reported it, a lot less pigeons around the world, and this is due to a certain ET species who live below us, who were used to eating humans in their staple diet. They were offered a replacement and have now gained quite a taste for pigeons, replacing the human food source. When you understand the term, let us make man in our image, in terms of not creation, but genetics, as an imitation of them in their image, then you begin to understand the bigger picture here of what unfolded. And then we reported mid-November, expect a lot of buzzing, particularly in the right ear from this day forward. Embrace it, the G-Cloud and the GNA is near. And for those asking about GNA, you will not find it on the internet anywhere. It's not known. So today, in November, Rothschilds, in cooperation with the Bank of England, HSBC and Deutsche Bank, tried to register new birth certificate bonds of American citizens as collateral in the hopes of issuing fresh air currencies against these bonds. But they must have forgotten they already issued these bonds previously and sold them all to the trust. So when they tried to issue them again, they came up as duplicates and were rejected. Failed again. Following a call in November by one of the leading Rothschilds, which was expected, like I have said, they all have to come to us eventually. They have no option. Several confirmations were given to us in a direct and indirect way by the third leading Rothschild, including the Dark Destroyer entity being gone. He also revealed that they were enemies of the Order of the Black Sun, and so subsequently the Rothschilds and the Trust should work together. Again, what these people failed to get is, but are learning, is they were all paired off against one another. There was no boogeyman, only a carefully constructed false enemy or opponent, and all manipulated from on high like a giant video war game. Now, every time Kim picks up the phone, and most of the time I pick up the phone, all of our calls are listened to. But Kim's in particular sets off servers all around the world the minute she answers the phone. And so all and sundry were listening in on this call, which may well go down as another event and another shot heard around the world, because Mr. Rothschild turned round and said, quote, "The RV/GCR was a carrot for jackasses." Jackasses. Oops. Oh dear. Oh, this got some generals around the world, globally, and agency people and some other minions, all of whom bought into this program that not only was it not physically possible, but a plot to distract the jackasses. Oh dear. All those so-called top people, top brass, are very pissed now currently. So we want to thank Mr. Rothschild, not often we say that, for telling the truth for once. The hope was maybe the world can move on and actually do something useful together. As for the jackasses, it serves you right. A simple check of the plethora of systems that you have and had at your disposal would have told you clearly this was all a ruse. You only have to run the math, unless they do Common Core. But the problem is their greed overtook their common sense. That's the problem. And as for the minions, you can cry all you like at the Rothschilds, but like the general population, we all fell for the oldest trick in the book. So I guess their IQ, not FQ, of over 140 that is required to work in the agencies doesn't work too well when greed and control becomes the dominant feature. As for the military people, you are even worse. As Kissinger told you all years ago what he thought of you all, quote, "Military men are just dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns in foreign policy," unquote. And you all sat there. Or this classic from SpongeBob man, John Kerry. Quote, "Education, if you make the most of it, you study hard, you do your homework and you make an effort to be smart, you can do well. If you don't, you get stuck in Iraq. Nice comment there. Like we say, time always tells. This show and my previous show, I stated the RV was not possible, and Kim has been telling you all so-called top brass dignitaries the same thing for the last 4, 5 or 6 years. Perhaps now you will listen to us more. Truth prevails in the end. The RVGCR was a carrot for jackasses. That's the classic line of the year, I think. Perhaps they will forgive us for a bit of schadenfreude. But the point is, you've been taking the piss out of the people for a long time, and a bit of payback time for the people. Carrots for jackasses. And then we played a song called Estranged, and the opening line, when you're talking to yourself and nobody's home. Indeed. These people are beyond stupid and need to be returned to source pronto. Their thinking levels at the top, real top end, are beyond absurd. Despite receiving the best schooling, inside knowledge and various other advantages as being part of the families, they are still at banal levels of stupidity. Repeating failed programs, following dead people, thinking their fake gods will come down and save them, waiting for US dollars to arrive from the higher dimensions to fund the RV. I kid you not, that was said by one of the generals. Ignoring the fact that there may not be US dollars at a higher dimension, and if it comes from a higher dimension to a lower dimension, you won't be able to see said dollars. Oops. And they call us nuts and conspiracy theorists. You were all told in the meeting what is the new directive by the new Queen. And yet on you go with your fake RVs, fake fresh air tokens, fake control systems, just wasting vast resources to block things, getting several servers and systems fried, and you still don't get it. To me, the Rothschild should have looked in the mirror when he called you jackasses. And to the rest of his Draco Osborne family also. So we're going to repeat it again. Listen carefully, jackasses. You gave all the riches away, all the assets, to the trust. You gave all the power away to the trust. And we are not giving it back to you jackasses to waste again. We're just not.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
You have lost. Get over it. That was Glenn driving off in his seduction wagon there. Right, on we go. A recent study of 1,600 children done by scientists told the story of 98% of children are born with and carry what is called the genius gene. Genius level of intellect, of creativity. Now, by aged 10, that is reduced to less than 30% of the children, by 15, less than 13%, and by aged 20 to 30, less than 2%. Why? Because they educated it out of us. Of course, education means training of animals. That they have destroyed by that point the most creative, intelligent species down to the level of animals. We need to teach, not educate. The teaching of soul development awareness is a must for the future development of our children, for the overall development of the species. And the consequences of not teaching them is why humanity has regressed backwards in terms of development and intellect. Now, there are many changes of the true nature of which you would probably never guess. To prepare the earth for the proposed new world, the satanic overlords who run this place have decided to make certain changes, but most times the reason for these changes are not obvious to the masses. Now, I've mentioned previously that certain ETs don't like smoking, and there is why the shame and guilt program that stupid people ran for them was implemented. For example, consider nicotine, which many will not know that nicotine was the main active ingredient in insecticides for many years, starting in the late 1800s, and it kills insects dead. And you would think, fine, let's continue with that natural-based product. No. Why? Because since we've developed secret relations with the aliens, some of whom are insectoids, advanced insect races, nicotine and therefore cigarette smoke is harmful to them. Oops. Now, the use of tobacco products has never been permitted in the secret underground cities and installations because in these protected areas, aliens are free to mingle with humans. Now, this was generally the case. At level 6 and further down is where the commingling occurred. What I understand now is that humans are banned from going below level 6, particularly the SSP, as they've found out to their cost. However, under agreements, aliens sometimes desire to move out and about on the surface, disguised as humans, and this has led to a new movement of smoking-free cities to accommodate these desires. And this tells you what I've been saying. They walk amongst us regularly, in particular areas where smoking is banned. And once you can see one of them, you will see more. And no, they will not be coming up to you and saying, "Hi, I'm an alien." They don't want to interact, by and large. So my saying a smoke or several a day not only keeps the reps away, but the bug people also. Let's click our lighters. One of the MK Ultra tactics used by rogue ET elements to get people into their order is the eye implant. This has been noted around the world of famous people, all with their left eye blackened, and that is due to the implant. It's a Vril device to wrap around the optical nerve, which eventually goes to the brain and onto the spinal column as it grows for complete takeover of the vessel. This is essentially what Elon Musk was promoting in November with brain implants. Now, personally, I think he needs strapping to one of his rockets and that frequently blows up and hurtled into space, in my opinion. These are not new gadgets, they're old gadgets, and they are not easy to remove either. It becomes like a crown of thorns around your head, and it's very nasty. So people have noticed the Illuminati symbols where they cover up the left eye and then do the circle. in the right eye. Apart from that being a symbol of Ra and son Horus, it is also the eye implant sign or codes they use. Often human-looking ETs have what is called a lazy eye. One eye is bigger than the other. Once you can see, it all becomes so obvious. Over the last 3 or 4 decades, there's been a big push in America to remove lead paint from homes and all previous traces of it. And people think it's for their health. Now that's funny. No, they're not interested in your health. But lead paint is another good example of how they convince the masses that they are interested in our health when evidence is all around you that they don't give a monkey's shite about our health. They just don't. Now, lately, local police have been provided with previously classified technologies which include portable X-ray devices to look into people's houses from the outside. Notwithstanding people putting in home security, Alexa machines and smart fridges, which are all spying and recording devices. Except the government, military and agency people have been using X-ray satellites to watch people inside of houses and buildings from as far back as the previous century. So what's this got to do with lead paint, you may ask? Well, since lead blocks X-rays, it was important to get rid of lead paint, otherwise these spy devices and satellites could not effectively operate. Oops. So the removal of lead paint was not for our health, but to further their agenda of spying on us. As above, so below applies on astral and physical realms, and so subsequently another trap or spell cast, the same as saying I'm going astral travelling. It's a spell cast and subsequently a trap. What exists on the physical plane or realm is replicated in a slight variant form on the astral level, and this confuses many as they think they're operating in the physical world when they are inhabiting the astral copy world. And this is where some of what is known as the Mandela effect takes place. Like I said, there are subtle differences for the critical questioner minds. Once you ask the questions in the copy realm, that construct falls apart. Now, people have reported whole buildings being missing and then turn around and find it or lose it altogether. This is the merging aspect of the two worlds, as the veil thins at various intersections of both space and also time. Things appearing, then disappearing, which is the classic encounter with UFOs, is part of this merging and then uncoupling process, occurring simultaneously on the different planes of existence, which I may cover in another piece at this time. I think I did. And it is part of their greater plan to cause the maximum confusion, leaving the majority of people not knowing whether they're coming or going, what is east or west, what is up or down, and consequently what is real or not. Now eventually that confusion will end and things will become a whole lot clearer. Nobody knows the date for that. What will be, will be. And then we covered, which I got a bit of flack for this. Some people amaze me, the things they complain about. But it is what it is. You can't please all of the people all of the time. The dick swinging contest of who's the world's richest person reared its ugly head in November, and claims that Bernard Arnault, who just bought out Tiffany's, which is another example of the large takeovers that our show had forecasted. Now, Arnault, Bezos and Gates are vying for top position of the world's not richest, but greediest bastard, if you ask me. And the combined wealth of just those three, and spent on eliminating global hunger, would last for the next 11 years. No one would go hungry for 11 years. The next four people below them would eliminate global hunger for a further 10 years. So 7 people's wealth could feed everyone on the planet for the next 21 years. Ponder on that for a second. 7 people's wealth could feed everyone on the planet for the next 21 years. Now, this was done on Thanksgiving Day. And I said, whilst we in America all stuffed our faces to excess today, there are still so many who don't even have one meal, never mind excess on one day. And I know many of you are struggling in varying ways, but spare a thought today for the many who have it far worse in life. We have Thanksgiving meal on one specified day of the year, and regardless of the real history of that day, but there are billions of people waiting on their next meal. To them, every meal is a Thanksgiving, and yet it doesn't have to be that way. This planet produces enough food per year to feed 3 planets, and yet we have over half of the world starving. Now, whilst we didn't create the problem, we are certainly responsible or negligent in our actions to prevent that genocide by largely ignoring it. And some will say, well, I gave money to charities to solve the problem. And that in basic terms is a nice gesture, except you didn't investigate the charities you were giving funds to. And they just collected your money and spent it on themselves, by and large. The world was told back in 1984 with Live Aid, and billions was poured in, allegedly to feed the African people. And what has changed? Nothing. Where did the money go to? The same billionaire scroungers and fake money and fake famous people like Geldof and Bono is what? One giant PR stunt to make them look and act normal, and the perception that they care to the rest of us. They're not, and they don't. All partying at a cost of thousands of dollars per night, fake socialites, whilst those thousands of dollars per night wasted on fake drizzle meals and expensive grape juice could feed an entire village for a whole year. Kanye West spent $150 million last year, in 1 year. That is more than the GDP of several countries. And yet people are signing up to his fake church to garner more money to feed his excessive greed-based lifestyle. He's about as genuine and real as Joel Osteen, preaching out prepared scripts, saying all the right words while collecting vast millions of dollars that totally negates the message he is allegedly spitting out. And the pair of them are as fake as a glass eye. So just 7 people can eliminate global hunger for the next 21 years. 7 people. One of those 7 people can easily stop their harvesting tactics, like Jeff Bezos. But no, people like the convenience too much. I will just order off Amazon, which has almost become a new meme. Go to your shops and buy the item. Boycott Amazon altogether. That baldy freak could end global hunger for the next 3.5 years with his own money. Instead, he's spending on increasing his own power base. All to say, I'm the richest man in the world. These people have no touch with reality whatsoever, and it's on a par for receiving badges for killing people. It is and should be a hall of shame, not a badge of honour. Now, the average person spends around $125 a day. Some spend more, some spend less. But $125 a day is around the average. And this is your total spending on items such as mortgage, rent, or food, energy, gas, and other expenses. If Jeff Bezos spent the same $125 a day, his current fortune would last him 880 million days before running out. $880 million days before running out, or 2.4 million years. With this being Thanksgiving Day, and be thankful for what you have, this piece of shit, and I'll repeat it again, which has got me into trouble last time, because I don't care, this piece of shit has that amount whilst many have nothing. If Bezos spent the same $125 a day, his current fortune would last 880 million days. And people think that's okay. Jeff Bezos, the world's greediest self-serving bastard award. Put that on your mantelpiece, Bezos, Gates, Arnold and Buffett. Now the irony is that Buffett has 86 billion. And he won't give a massive chunk of it away so billions can have a Buffett. It's not lost on me. And more importantly, it should not be lost on you all either. Need, not greed, is we the people's ideal going forward. People acting real and in reality land, not fake, vacuous bastards living in the city of light world where no problems exist. They exist everywhere, and it is our duty as humans to correct all the world's ills, and we won't do that being service to self. Correct your thinking, your own perspective, and your own responsibility in these matters, and your roles to correct it going forward. Because, you know what? Nothing else matters. People are starving. Over half the planet are starving per day, and these greedy psychopaths could end global hunger for the next 21 years. And then we have more evidence of the Rothschilds struggling. Oh my, I never. The embattled UK banknote printer De La Rue, which is Rothschild's owned. And this was a further example what this show has been stating. All these elites are now being burnt badly in their own pockets. Now, De La Rue, whose new management led by CEO Clive Vacker, warned the company's 171 million debt pile went up 63 million last year. And it meant it could breach its banking covenants if trade continues to worsen. What that means is it'll go into the printing notes, which they can't do anymore anyway. Well, they can, but they can't use them. And if costs are not slashed and the business fails to get paid on time. But if people still don't believe the Rothschilds and the clowns are struggling, perhaps this next piece will make you ponder. The Rothschilds racked up in Moscow at the end of November, begging the oligarchs for 300 billion, promising them that the ruble would be the new world trade currency, and subsequently the Russians would be the new Federal Reserve. I wonder what China and Beijing think of that, given they were promised to be the new Fed from 2013 onwards. That agreement was agreed as far back as 1910. Now, to do this, they were taking over JP Morgan and other banks. However, to achieve this, they were coming to the trust for the money. It boggles the mind. But if they do, fine. But it will not be on their terms, but ours. Now, however, what is lost, forgotten, or mind-wiped from these, and I will use their own quote, jackasses, is the trust already holds all the liens against the Russian assets anyway. Round and round we go. The G-Cloud and the GNA is getting closer and is currently having effect on people, some good, some not so good. The ones who have done their work will benefit from it greatly. The ones who haven't may struggle more than previously in this next phase. I showed some the path of life recently. It is the letter N for Norman, or the wave. And the first line up on the left is the left-hand path, but it has no gate or exit. Those on the top of that first line think they've reached the pinnacle. They think they are the illuminated ones, and they are the gods known as the Elites, or better known as elites. It's Elites. But it's the false light they bathe in, and that light of theirs is dimming by the day now. Now, to get to the right-hand path, you have to slide down the middle, a fairly steep descent, and here lies the sleepers and the majority of the alt media. Now, the reason I say that is they are still following many of the lies that are being spat out by the clown agency-based groups, and are largely blaming something or someone else, neglecting the fact that despite being the 99%, they are somehow not responsible for the world's ills. Wrong thinking. Our group, Randy's and Alan's, have stripped away those lies, come off the downward descent, and are climbing up the right-hand path. We are between a third and 3/4 of the way up that path, depending on the individual's ability to learn and understand the information. Now, some people have said we have to wait for the sleepers to catch up. Good luck with that. But there are 3 things wrong with that thinking. 1, how long did it take you to get where you are now? 2, do you think yourself will stand still to allow them to catch up? And 3, if point 2 is correct, where are the pioneers or the way showers to move forward going to come from? Do you think you're just going to stand still for most of you on that path? No, you won't. You will go through the gate. The right-hand path, unlike the left-hand path, has an open gate for progression. Some of you one day will go through that gate and back to where you belong, amongst the spiritual worlds, out amongst the stars. As for the rest, well, you're all going to die. No, the rest had the exact same opportunity as you. They failed to take it. And none of you are responsible for that in any way, shape or form. Only themselves. Whilst they chose to point outside of themselves, we looked, embraced and went inwards. And the ending message for that show was, remember what you have, not what you haven't. Remember how far you have come and not focus on how far you have to go. This was never a race, sprint or dash. It is and always was a long-term project that will go beyond my time here, and also many of you also. But we laid the foundations before putting up the walls and installing the roof.